Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. I am super excited for this conversation. I actually have a friend from who's actually out there who I think is a U.S. national team scout, Aaron Lujan, who I also think went to Colorado College way back when he was coming through. So, and probably more importantly, I'm very interested in the teams that sort of go out further west, because I think you guys have some unique approaches to the game and play a little bit different than our typical Northeast, and I think you deal with different issues from a scheduling and all that kind of perspective. So appreciate you taking the time and excited for this.
Thanks for having me. It's funny you mentioned Aaron Lujan too. We just had him on campus 2 weekends ago for a Hall of Fame induction. His 1992 team, which was the CC men's soccer team that went to the Final Four, just went into the Hall of Fame. So he was down here with all of his classmates, and we threw a nice party, had a great time. Great soccer weekend.
Are you serious? That's awesome. It's like I didn't know that there was the connect. Like I didn't know that had happened. Scott, I haven't spoken to him in a while. He was an assistant coach. We were assistant coaches together at Princeton for a while. So great guy.
Small world,
great
yeah.
guy. Okay, so if just jumping right into this, I think you've been head coach for 8 years. I think I read that right.
Right.
Could you just talk about your soccer experience? How did you end up at Colorado College? And just give us some background.
Yeah, let's see. I'll give you the quick version of this story. So, my playing career, I'm an East Coaster initially, grew up in New Jersey, and my playing career brought me out to Colorado. In 2009, I signed with the Colorado Rapids and played there for 4 years. Mm. And during that time, life stuff happened, and I met my now wife. And, when the end of my contract was coming in 2012, and was thinking about, what would be the next step. It wasn't going to be, with the Rapids anymore. And, thinking about popping the question to my wife, Melissa. She was finishing a doctorate program in Denver. She's Denver born and raised, and needed to be here. So, thinking about not just, my own career now, but our future together and what that might look like and how we're going to make that work. I started kind of sniffing around a little bit late summer, early fall, while the MLS season was still going, knowing that, I wasn't entirely certain I wanted to get into coaching, but I thought it would be something that would suit me and that I'd enjoy it. And, I think getting to play professionally, realize, it's the lifestyle is probably what I miss the most. And it never felt like work, and I don't think coaching feels like work. So, being around the game was important to me. And so, I fired out a few emails to coaches here in state, and, timing is everything in life. Within 10 minutes of hitting send on an email, I get a call from, my predecessor here, head coach of 50 years, Horst Richardson, and he informed me that, his current assistant was going to be moving on, and, why don't you come down? We'll have lunch, see the place, check it out. And I really did fall in love with it. We spent 3-4 hours on campus. I met a bunch of the players, and I said, what, this environment is very familiar to me. This is the type of institution where I think I'd be a good fit, and I enjoy coaching here. And he offered me the job, and he let me sit on it a little bit. I wasn't entirely certain at that point that I was going to, retire from playing, but I thought it was a great opportunity to get my start in coaching, not knowing, of course, that, a year and a half later he was going to decide to retire, and that, over a decade now, and I'm still in the same place and very happy to be here. So that's the shortest version possible.
You still haven't left.
Right? That's the question. It's like, this is it. It's the only place I've coached.
Yeah. You play on Stewart Field. That's your home?
Correct.
Is that where? Yeah. I think I would have taken the job without batting an eyelash. You overlook the background is the Rockies, right? Like you're right there.
It's pretty scenic.
Wow.
Yeah. Look, everything about this place is unique,
Uh-huh.
academically, athletically, location. I mean, we can talk for days about that, but yeah,
Yeah.
look, I mean, there's not too many, college athletic facilities with a 14,000-foot mountain in the background, and getting to call
Yeah.
that home and look at that every day. It does not get
Yeah.
old. I'll tell you that. If you've been doing it for a
Yeah, yeah.
decade, I still
That's great.
appreciate it.
That's got to be great for fitness when your team doesn't perform so well. Hey, I want you to get to the peak of that 14,000-foot summit and come back, and you got 15 minutes. You know?
There's plenty of vertical to find around here. That's for sure.
Yeah. um, okay, so this is unique, right? So you were at the Rapids for as long as you have, as for the 4 years, and now you have a good stint college soccer. I'm curious, and this could apply at all levels, right? Because this is a question I think everyone asks. Like, have American players gotten better? Have
Absolutely.
college, like in your case, do you think your college players have gotten better?
Yeah, great question. And from my side of things, I do think the floor has come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think like the standard player that you get across all divisions of college soccer is better, but I think there's also maybe been a little bit of compression, because at the top end now you don't see as many young players taking the college route, right? Like that top end talent is
Mm-hmm.
signing homegrown talents, it's turning pro, and yeah, look, there's a couple Division 1 leagues where the ACC. Look at a league like that where the quality is through the roof, and they're producing a lot of pros, but
Mm-hmm.
by and large, a lot of those players now have a clear pathway to the top
Mm-hmm.
level, and so they're not choosing the college route, and so I think the maybe that top end talent, right, is being compressed a little bit, but like just your standard player
Mm-hmm.
across all levels just keeps getting better and better. Like the
Yeah.
coaching that they're getting at a young age, like when they come off to college, like their tactical knowledge, the ability of some of these players to on their recruiting visit, right, to come into the office and just kind of square up with me and like talk soccer for a half an hour. It's actually quite
Mm-hmm.
impressive. I mean, they are able to
Yeah.
do things that I would not have felt comfortable doing with a coach when I was 17 years old. So
Yeah. Do you, I mean that the quality of coaches as well has gotten better, right? Like the younger coaches, I think, are really killing it. They're just really knowledgeable about the game in ways that I say it to some of the older coaches don't have, and it could just be because of the exposure to the game that we have now that never was the case, at least when I was growing up, right? Like,
totally.
soccer made in Germany every Sunday morning, right? Like that was the extent of it for an
Yeah.
hour. So
Yeah, it takes generations for this stuff to happen, right? I mean, just
yeah,
even parents now, you've got a lot more young kids whose moms and dads played the game, and when they're
yeah,
coaching, they're the U4, U5 rec teams when they're getting started. I mean, just what the exposure for young players is just
hmm
leaps and bounds ahead of where it was when I was a kid growing up.
yeah. Um, c- could you just talk about, and this will lead into a bunch of other questions that I have, but could you just talk about the Southern Collegiate Athletic Conference? I mean, you geographically, you're kind of end up going all over the place. I mean, you're sort of an island unto yourself in Division 3 world, but located in Colorado. But you played Trinity, Texas Lutheran, University of St. Thomas, very very good this year. University of St. Thomas. Yeah, what's the conference like? The competitive level? How would you rate it in comparison to other conferences? Is it underrated, overrated? You tell
Tell
me.
you what, yeah, I mean, having been here for 10 years and watched the league grow, it's
Mm-hmm.
been quite impressive. I mean, when you look at certainly at the front end of the league, that in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, Colorado College, Trinity, Southwestern, now St. Thomas, now they're the full-fledged members. um, even our COVID spring, I mean, Centenary made a run and won our conference tournament, right? Had there been an NCAA tournament that COVID spring, like they would have been in it. And so, yeah, like the front half of our league, especially, I think has gotten really strong, really competitive. Um, it's been dog eat dog, and yeah, and I think kind of quietly, because we are in the West region. Sometimes we feel like we're forgotten about a little bit out
Mm-hmm.
here in the Division 3 landscape, but we've put together like a really nice group of schools that are highly competitive. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, St. Thomas has been a fantastic addition. They've got really good players, good coaching.
Yeah.
Trinity's always been a juggernaut, and you
Yeah.
look at schools like Southwestern that have they've become a really tough out on any day. And like Texas Lutheran is finished fifth and not made the conference tournament the last 2 years with a four-time All-American. I mean, if they're
Mm-hmm.
in it, they can certainly win it. Not a team you want to play against when
Yeah.
it matters. So I think the league has really really grown, and it's been a lot of fun to see that. And I think like no, if you want to be a team that's in the postseason and make a run, like you need to have that kind of
Yeah.
week in week out competition throughout the season to kind of get you fit and ready for a 2 game weekend in November. That's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah. But to that note, do you? I mean, is it a challenge for you from a scheduling standpoint? I mean, obviously you have. I mean, you're traveling, right? Like, again, just because of where you're located, quite a bit when you're on the road. Does it make challenging your schedule? Does it make it challenging to schedule teams, let's say out of conference teams, to give you, again, trying to balance strength of schedule and all that kind of stuff? Is that an issue for you?
We spend a lot of time on it. Yeah, it takes a lot of work to put together the kind
Yeah.
of schedule that when you understand the process and the need to play, your strength of schedule matters and regionally ranked
Mm-hmm.
games and all that stuff where you want to give yourself that option to be an at-large team, right? Like we just don't have that luxury of just going up the road a couple
Mm-hmm.
hours and grabbing a top 25 team to make sure you're where you need to be in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I think we need to be really good hosts. When we bring teams out here, I think that's important that we maintain good relationships with schools across
Mm-hmm.
the country. And this is a wonderful place to visit, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
we kind of put that out there and
Mm-hmm.
want people to understand, like, no, it's kind of a destination trip. And in
Mm-hmm.
the Division III world, I think the student athlete experience is at the forefront. And so
That's
knowing that
right.
you come out here, play at a wonderful facility, maybe get your players an experience that they're not going to get otherwise. I think it's wonderful, but you also have to realize, look, like nobody needs to come here.
Mm-hmm.
Like most schools have can get what they need within a
Yeah.
decent bus ride. So our realities are a little bit different, and we do the best we can. But with that said, we have been able to put together very competitive schedules. I mean, our fall schedule for 23 here is pretty beefy, I would say. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's about as good as we can do. And yeah, and so look, like it's never going to be perfect. We have a nice balanced 8 and 8, 8 home, 8 away, 16 game
Mm-hmm.
schedule this fall. This past fall in 22, we were 11 away, 5 home. That was
Yeah.
really
I'm
difficult.
I'm looking
In
at
fact,
that. That must have been
yeah,
tough,
yeah.
tough, tough.
We added it up. Just we were curious at the end of the year. We flew 17,000 miles as a team
Jeez
in
Almighty.
what, 2 months. So, but we get to provide a pretty cool experience in that process. Not many teams
Yeah.
get to fly to all their road games and
Yeah.
to do it comfortably. So, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I got to ask you this. I thought about it just as you were talking. I seem to recall, was it the Steve Sampson days? The national team used to go to Bear Lake, Bear Lake Mountain, somewhere California for the altitude,
Mhm.
and it's usually preceded by a trip to Mexico City. Is that's where they would start, just to get a little bit of the custom being at such a high altitude. Does does the altitude provide you with I'll just say, like, a competitive advantage? So when teams show up, is it real? Is right? You want to make your home field a fortress, but does the altitude help with that for you? I'm
Yes.
asking because I really don't know. I just.
Yeah, no, it does, no doubt. I do think the substitution rules in college soccer are still pretty liberal. So you get a,
Hmm.
a really good team out here that's a legit 20 deep. I mean, I think you could substitute around that, a
Hmm.
little bit. But no doubt. I mean, we live and train at over 6,000 feet, and I think our home form, reflects that.
Hmm.
Um, and even when you go down to sea level, if the conditions are favorable, I mean, you do. physiologically get a little boost when you go down to sea level. The only
Yeah.
issue is for us playing in Texas. I think it's easy to forget. While we enjoy the altitude advantage, when you go to Texas in September and it's 100
Yeah.
degrees and humid,
Yeah. They have
we're
the
not
heat.
activated for
They
those
have the
kind of
heat
conditions
advantage.
either. So
Yeah.
no, I think it's look, it's all relative, right? Teams come
Hmm.
here to play us, and they might suffer a little bit, and then we go on the road to Texas, and we
Yeah.
we got to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to suffer a little bit to get
Yeah.
a win. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I think we enjoy a nice advantage in altitude here in Colorado for sure.
Yeah. I was just curious about that. Like I said, for some reason, I remember the national team had a home base there or something, or national team camps. But how big of a deal is team culture to you? Is it something that you work on? Again, not knowing the school, is there like how much emphasis do you put on that?
I think it's everything, you know. And I think a lot of that, you take care of on the front end, or at least you try to through good recruiting. I think, you try to get good people in the door that kind of share your vision for,
Hmm.
what the expectations are and what you want to achieve and the balance that you want them to strike as student athletes in a high academic environment. And, I think when you do that, I think a lot of the potential problems kind of get cut out on the front end. And I think, if we can get credit for anything, maybe that's it, that we've brought in like-minded players who have a really strong appreciation for the high academic liberal arts world and Division III
Hmm.
athletics, and they get it. And so I think we've had in my decade here just some really wonderful guys. Tight team camaraderie, no cliques. Again, shared vision for what we want to accomplish, and then for me and the coaching staff, it makes it a lot of fun for us.
Hmm. Um, all right, so I'll ask this just without prompting. What's your overall assessment of your past season?
It was frustrating, I would say, at times because you know, look, we had a rough start to the year. I think in a way that it hardened us, right? We had to go out to the Pacific Northwest, and we played 3 games in 5 days, which
Yeah,
is going to be, that's going to be a tough thing to
yeah,
do anytime, anywhere. And so, to do that though over the first week or first 2 weeks of school, right?
yeah.
And CP is known for our unique block plan. You take one class at a time, so every missed day
Hmm.
is kind of a big deal. And so that was we brought the whole squad because it was kind of all hands on deck for 3 and 5 days. Throw in the first week of class for all your first years, missing
Hmm.
3 consecutive days, which is unheard of, right? I had to get special, institutional permission just to do that. I mean, that's
Hmm.
definitely out of the norm. We try to limit missed class to
Yeah.
one day every time we go somewhere. But we were shorthanded in games. We were down to 15, and you know, Willamette popped up. They wanted to play, so it's like, oh, let's do it, right? There's a chance to play
Yeah.
a good team. And so, yeah, we start 0-2-1. It was a rough trip, but then we didn't lose for the rest of the season. I mean, we went 13 games unbeaten. That was the longest streak since Coach Lujan's '92 team. Like
Yeah.
that's formidable. But
That's
I think
true.
within that, there were some frustrating times. There's too many ties for me. I mean, I look a lot
Uh-huh.
of that. Some of that's down to the rule changes and not having overtime anymore. I think we
Hmm.
saw more draws across the board in college soccer. That was to be
Yeah.
expected. But no, I do think if one or two of those ties our wins, maybe
Hmm.
our season looks a little different,
Hmm.
because it was strong through there, and then we just showed some cracks right at the very end,
Hmm.
and just didn't have quite enough to get over the hump in our conference semifinal. So I
Hmm.
think there was a lot to be proud of in there. Again, like a 13 games unbeaten, anytime, anywhere is solid. But I think a lot of us felt like maybe we still were capable of a little bit more at the end.
Hmm. Hmm. I didn't even notice that. I did see, and usually I'm pretty good at seeing like trends, but yeah, you go 0-2-1, lose to good Williamette, however you pronounce that. I always get confused. Tied Puget Sound, and then against a really good Pacific Lutheran, you lost to really good Pacific Lutheran
Mhm.
team. So, and top of all that, you're on a flight. right? Like on the
Yeah, it was.
as
Yeah,
bookends, like holy mackerel.
yeah. Well, we were
And then
grateful to Pacific Lutheran. At least they allowed they played host for us for the neutral game against Willamette. So at least we didn't have to fly all the way out there, but then drive all the way down to Salem. So Willamette came up to
yeah,
play us, and so at least we could stay in the Tacoma area, which was which
yeah,
was nice.
yeah. Oh, so yeah, that would have been an added boost to you if you had to get on a bus for
I would
hours.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Nah, we're
But
used to
yeah,
it
then
though.
and then you go unbeaten until the SCAC championship, right? Like or where you lost to Trinity close. That's interesting. Again, because I think Colorado is a unique place, right? Like just in terms of the interest of people in the imagination, right? Has that aura to it. Like, what's your recruiting area? Where do you recruit the most from? Is it national? Are you bringing kids from all over, or is it the neighboring states, and whatnot?
Our roster is always pretty well represented,
Mm-hmm.
geographically. I mean, we're coast to coast for sure. When I took over the program, I think we only had one Coloradan on the team, and
Mm-hmm.
so I definitely tried to put a little bit more of a focus here in state, just because the quality of the youth players is pretty good here, and I just there's obviously benefits to recruiting locally where you really get to
Uh-huh.
know the player, you can watch them extensively, get to know the parents, the families pretty well, and I think just have a stronger feel for what you're getting. I think
Mm-hmm.
youth players are they're going to be inconsistent. So if you fly across the country for a showcase and you have this massive list of players to watch, right? You've done this.
Yeah.
You may only get a half or a game, and which
Yeah.
version are you getting of that player on
Yeah.
that day?
Yeah.
They're very best, they're very worst, somewhere in between. And so the reality is we are isolated and we're not able to watch players as much as we probably like to be thorough. And so there's certainly a benefit to recruiting some more local players, but
Mm-hmm.
we're also never going to be an institution, where our athletics teams are, fielding, 26 Coloradans. That's never going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, there's been pockets, the country traditionally, like the North Shore of Chicago has always been
Mm-hmm.
a hot spot for CC soccer. But no, it changes. When I took over, I mean, we didn't even get emails from anybody from the Southeast. It's like, a Florida kid, the mountains, what's that? And since then, we've had, a small handful from the Atlanta metro area, a couple Floridians now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no rhyme or reason. We get them from all over. They're a good player. We're interested.
One of your players. I'm just looking at your roster now and it's true. You're all over I mean, relatively. Pacific Northwest, obviously, then East Coast, South. Like you do have a good range, including a kid who comes from my backyard, Atticus Lynch, my Atticus Lynch defender.
Yeah, Princeton. Yeah, I'm a Jersey guy
Yeah.
too. So yeah, we gotta have one at least. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, got to. Where are you from originally?
Tom's River.
Tom's. Oh, yeah, yeah. I used to play for the New Jersey Stallions. We played at the high
Oh
school
yeah,
there,
yeah. I used to
and
watch him when I was a kid. Yeah.
nice. Um, and then yeah, I'm very familiar with Tom's River. Very familiar. Drive through it countless times in a year, just because it's the go between that and the shore. Like
Right.
it's always there. So, um, sorry, tangent, total tangent. Okay, so you may have mentioned this. You went 8-3-6. You finished in the regular season fourth in the conference. What, aside from frustrating, what would you say are some of the highlights that you had for the season that you were like, man, if we can? I always say highlights in my mind are those moments or those games where you're like, if we could just capture that and do it every single day and every single game, nobody can stop us.
Yeah. Well, I think, despite losing to Trinity in the SCAC semifinals, a barn burner of a game. I think both teams played well. We definitely didn't have a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
We just came up a little bit short. I think, to have beaten them at home was nice, and the way we did it, like one of our seniors had a just memorable goal, like fantastic game icing goal, like that was a lot of fun. And then we had to dig in, and we drew down there the last weekend of the season, and historically results have not gone our way, and that's to put it kindly. So I
Uh-huh.
think to get a 0-0 shutout there, close out the season. Right, on one hand, it handed them the regular season championship, but on the other hand, it kept our kind of our momentum going a little bit with an unbeaten streak, and gaining some confidence going into a really tough environment and getting a point out
Yeah.
of it. So I look at those games. I think our tie with St. Thomas, I think they were like 14th or 15th in the country at the time. They were
Yeah.
flying, and so like I don't celebrate ties for sure, but um, we were a little shorthanded that game, and they
Hmm.
were in really great form. And so I
Yeah.
think to get out of that one with a draw wasn't the worst result. But no,
Hmm.
I look back, and I think this speaks to your question before about the strength of our league, right? Like we went undefeated in league play for the first time ever. We went
Yeah.
4-0-4, and that got us
Yeah.
fourth, right? And
Yeah.
that tells you that there's some strong
Yeah.
teams in the league. But again, like too many
Yeah.
ties for me. I think one
Yeah.
one draw becomes a win. We're in second with
Yeah.
breathing room. Um, but yeah, I think that's
Would that
something
have
I
made
look
a
back.
difference? I'm sorry to interrupt, but if one of those draws becomes a win, you're in second place.
Yeah, so after drawing
Wow.
Trinity, we drew Shriner
Uh huh.
the last regular season game. They popped us for a goal. I think we were up 1-0 and maybe 3 minutes to go. We give one up right in overtime, so it's 1-1, and that's 2 points lost. I'm pretty sure if we won
Wow.
that game, we go second. And look, like, get to the conference tournament, like
Yeah.
it's only a 4 team event. You're playing somebody good in a weird way. Like, does it
Yeah.
even matter at that point? I think
Yeah.
I do think that tie, it took a little bit of our
Yeah.
momentum away.
Edge. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
feeling, feeling decent about the draw away at Trinity, and all of a sudden, you're in control of a game 1-0 with a few minutes left. Like that tie feels more like a loss,
Loss. Yeah.
and then you got to turn around and go right back
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
and play again. So that was a little bit of when I speak of like frustrating moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was proud of the group in the fall for being. We were tough to beat, right? We
Yeah.
became a team that knew how to get a result,
Yeah.
and that wasn't always characteristics of all the teams I've coached in the past. So I felt like, at times, while we had too many ties, in a different year, maybe a few of those ties would have been losses, and like the group just
Yeah.
did a good job of digging in and being a difficult team to beat. And I think
Yeah.
that's a good platform for us to build on for next year.
Hmm. You do become you are difficult to beat in that stretch. And I'll just say, right, you won every game but one where you tied at home. So you definitely say, and to your point, St. Thomas was flying. I mean, right? They lost to Chicago
Hmm.
in Chicago. Yeah, in a close game that was the game to me that if Chicago was going to falter, that was going to be it. But anyhow, that yeah, that so let me ask you, because we've been talking about too many ties. You had six of them: Puget Sound, Carleton, St. Thomas that you mentioned, Texas Lutheran, that big the victory tie at Trinity, and then the loss tie at Shriner. Is it fair to say that you're not a fan of the no or of the new rule of not playing out the overtimes?
It's all relative, I think.
Yeah.
When we play at home with the altitude advantage, I think, if a game gets extended,
Mm-hmm.
if we go to overtime,
It's all you.
traditionally we wear
Yeah.
teams down, and, oftentimes if I'm a betting man, I think we got a good shot at it. Whereas, when we go on the road and it's one of those muggy days in Texas, and if we play back to back overtime games, Friday,
Oh, you're
Sunday,
done. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that can be really hard on us, right? So you know, from a competitive standpoint, right, I don't know that it makes a difference. I do like being able to know that I'm going to make my flight home on Sunday. If I'm being honest, we spend a lot of money to travel for all these games, and being an outdoor sport, look, weather's going to be a variable, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
At least one of them overtime's now been taken out of the picture, so it gives me a little bit more ease and confidence that we're going to get home on time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't feel too strongly one way or another. I think from a student athlete safety
Yeah.
standpoint, it's an
Yeah.
obvious thing. I also think the best teams out there that you build your roster to be able to play in November and like you're
Yeah.
2022 deep. I don't think good teams that have deep rosters are feeling that overtime
Yeah.
games all that much. I think you get around it with the liberal
Yeah.
substitution and
Yeah.
stuff. So it
And I
it,
think the good teams, for the most part, there are exceptions to the rule, but I also think that the good teams know how to get it done in 90.
mm,
So one way or the
true.
other, I think that's a big differentiator. And if they
Yeah,
do have to
I
go to
think,
overtime, like they could have resolved it in overtime, but they just don't now. And so, it's a. I think if they end up in a tie, the really good teams, I think to a certain extent, I almost think they see that as a loss. Like you said, the
mhm,
the Shriner game for you all, a
yeah.
lost tie. Like you lost 2 points, you didn't gain a point, you lost 2 points. But all right. So are you done with spring? I mean, your spring trainings?
We have 2 sessions this week and then 3 more next week to wrap
Oh,
up.
nice. So
Yeah.
can I ask you, like, what did you have any specific objectives to the spring? Like, are you trying different formation? Are you trying, like, what is your focus for those training sessions? Because I have this crazy theory again that I think this spring is for the good teams use this spring to really set themselves up for a successful fall. And so I'm always curious about, hey, what do you do for the spring? So
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, it's not really, unfortunately, we just don't have the bodies to maybe tinker with
mm,
new formations and stuff. Like we don't have enough players to play full sided in training.
right.
So it's a lot more, six-a-side type
Mm-hmm.
activities. But no, I mean, the way I look at it, right? I mean, the way the fall season operates in college soccer, it's right, it's short but highly intensive. So
Mm-hmm.
your preseason runway isn't very long. We, as we talked about, play at 6,000 feet, and a lot of players are going to be coming back to Colorado from different parts of the country and need to reacclimate to the
Acclimate.
altitude. But
Yeah. Good
I
point.
think you have to be smart about how hard you push in preseason and what you
Mm-hmm.
do if you want your guys healthy for September 1. Um, and so I look at the fall, and like from day one, it's big picture stuff, right? It's team preparation. It's not really catered to the individual development so much because I just don't think you have time, right? Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
have 4
Yeah.
full-time coaching staff members that can rip
Yeah.
through, daily training videos and meet with players. I think like it all needs to be catered towards the weekend games, and you're starting to build that mostly from day one of preseason.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into the spring, I think that's more an opportunity for us to focus on the individual, where it's smaller numbers when you take away your graduating seniors, maybe a couple guys study abroad, injuries, right? Most of our training sessions, we only have maybe 15, 16 players tops.
Yeah.
So it allows us to do a bit more with the individual, more on functional roles. And, I always phrase it to the players that this is your opportunity now to make a move, right?
Yeah.
Your advantage over the incoming first years is you are here and they are not,
Yeah.
right? And that's how it is. And so wherever your standing is in the team, whether you're a starter that's trying to hold on to that spot,
Yep.
whether you come off the bench a lot and are trying to break into the 11, for us we have to pick a travel roster, right? We can't bring 26 players on every road trip, so maybe some guys are trying to fight their way into the travel squad for next year.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, this is an opportunity for you over 5 weeks to make your mark a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we definitely try to make it a little bit more about the individual and give them a platform to prove themselves for the next fall, knowing that, hey, like I said, once we get into preseason in August, it's building this team and preparing for the first game of the season straight out of the
Yeah.
gate.
Is I mean, does Colorado College do that a lot with in the spring? Like, do you have a kids go overseas to study abroad?
We do, like, we have one junior doing a full
Mm,
semester in New Zealand right now.
mm.
It changes year by year. I mean, we
Yeah,
fully
yeah,
support that. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and
yeah.
while they might miss our 5 week spring season, I think look, it's the world's game. I mean, no matter where somebody
Yeah,
studies
yeah.
abroad, like, if you
They're
really
gonna
want to
play.
play, maybe you're not going to find the structure that you have here, the coaching, but you can always control your fitness, and you should find some ways to play at a decent level if you study abroad. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's one. I think the maturity that's gained from spending those months abroad on your own far outweigh
Invaluable. Yeah,
any law. And I know not all coaches feel that way, but um,
yeah.
yeah. So we're supportive of that, and there's some years we'll get 4 or 5 that go. This year it was just one. But one of the unique features of Colorado College being on this singular block system where you take one class at a time is
Hmm.
there are opportunities to take single or double blocks abroad. So we've had
Yeah.
players, do 2 blocks coming out of winter break abroad, and then
Uh-huh.
be back here in
Uh,
block 7 in time for our spring season. So they
yeah.
get the best of both worlds.
Uh-huh.
So it changes year by year.
Um, there, there's this is totally anecdotal, but about hey, if you're going to play, if you're going to study abroad, if you want to play, there's probably plenty of opportunity. I just saw maybe it's Cairn University here in PA. I forget who was highlighting one of their players studying abroad, and they showed him score a cracker of a goal in a league he plays in England. So, and they were like, "Yeah,
Cool.
he's not here for the spring, but man, that guy's playing." So
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. Maybe you'll be better off. Right?
You can find a game anywhere, as I've always said, right? Like you can. If I, when I was growing up, it was you got phone calls. Hey, I hear there's a game. Okay, I'll be there.
Mhm.
Like some it didn't matter where, hour away. Like you just found them. Overseas, you can't. You stumble into a park, you'll play a game. Right? So,
Right.
um, okay, couple more for you. What's your recruiting class look like? Is it done? That's the question I always wonder about. Especially was it today is commitment day or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Oh, we're long done, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
very early decision driven with our
Uh huh.
recruiting. I mean, typically, by the November 1 early decision deadline, we're
Hmm.
mostly done, right? Occasionally
Yeah.
there'll be somebody who applies, early action, who might have some options that came on our radar late. Will
Hmm.
find their way into the recruiting class. But by and large, we're working through the summer months, early fall to
Yeah.
wrap up. Your quote unquote early decision,
Yeah.
commitments. So we've got a biggest class we've had in a long time. We did want to get our roster size up a little bit. We've been quite low for a
Uh
college
huh.
soccer roster for a few years, especially coming out of COVID. We've had 24, 25 players, and it's
Right.
just not enough. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun group to manage,
Yeah.
and makes it almost like a club, kind of like a club
Hmm.
environment.
Yeah.
But even if you got a couple injuries, I mean, you can't even play full sided in training,
Yeah.
and there's always a couple injuries. So we wanted to, get up more towards that 28 to 30 range. So we have 11 players coming in, but pretty wide ranging. I think it's a nice group. Certainly, there's going to be some guys in that mix that will help us immediately. So we're pretty
Hmm.
excited.
Is it from around the country too? I mean, is it the geographic mix that you sort of see in your roster already?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
We've got a couple guys from San Diego, Pacific
Wow.
Northwest, Wyoming, Colorado, Virginia. Um, where else here? We've got a guy coming from Shreveport, actually, Shreveport, Louisiana.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
quite
gosh.
San
He's good.
Antonio.
In for a
Yeah,
shock. You know?
yeah.
In for a
Makes it fun
shock.
though. I love that.
Yeah.
Getting guys from different parts of the country, and
Yeah.
have different upbringings and stuff,
It,
and trying to meld them all together into a somewhat cohesive group in 10 days.
yeah.
So I enjoy it.
This is because you mentioned that you don't might not get out to see as many kids or as often as you like. So just as an example for this class, which is pretty big, and you're intentional about the size, but are these guys who came through you for the most part, and that you like for whatever reason you liked what you saw, maybe you saw them later, or is this like guys that you're going out and finding in the different tournaments that you might attend?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think
Mm,
historically we yield more players that seek us out first, right? Where that first
hmm.
email comes from
Yeah,
them, where it's usually something familiarity about the uniqueness of the college, right? Where
yeah,
a family member went here, or
yeah, yeah.
guidance counselors familiar with our unique block plan that we do, and kind of puts us on their radar with that
Hmm.
initial group of schools. I think we'll still get players obviously that we identify just through being at events and
Hmm.
seeing a good player, but there's going to be fewer of those than those who seek us out initially. Then we just kind of work through that process with
Yeah,
them.
yeah. That's I'm always curious about that, the process. And it's like I said, I hate to beat a dead horse. You guys are kind of unique because you're an island unto yourself, right? Like, again, in the Northeast, you throw a rock, you could throw a rock and you'll hit a school, right? It's just
Hmm.
the way it is. And you're sort of there where you're at, and then everything is either all south of you or west and northwest, and
Yeah,
so I
it's
just
a
wonder
challenge.
how that.
It's
Yeah, yeah, I'm
yeah, I mean,
sure it is. Like,
the campus visit, it's like, no, I mean, on one hand, I'm telling you, we're very early decision driven, and we want to
uh huh,
try to wrap up our recruiting class by the early fall. But in order to do
yeah,
that, I mean, these prospects, they need to visit, they need to, right. And where,
yeah,
I grew up in New Jersey, and like, hey,
yeah. Holy
it was
mackerel!
very easy to hop in the car. We're going to drive to
Yeah,
Boston, and you can
yeah,
check out a half dozen schools in a weekend.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas to come out to Colorado College, it's typically a
yeah,
special trip, and
yeah,
if because we're not only the only Division III institution, but
yeah.
the only high academic liberal arts
It's
college, right?
college. Yeah,
I mean, I guess technically Air Force is categorized the same, but we couldn't be any more different, right? Even though they're filling all the roles. So,
yeah,
it's typically a special trip, and that's an expense and it's time. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sometimes it takes some planning, and so we're on guys
yeah.
right away. We identify them and tell them of our interest in
Hmm.
them. That hey, this is a really critical step, right? Putting foot to soil, learning
Yeah,
about the block in person, getting a feel for life as a student athlete in this part of the country.
yeah.
You got to do that. It's a box you must check. And
Hmm.
obviously time moves quickly. We always
Yeah,
think, oh, I've got time, and then how many schools are you visiting? Your tournaments, showcases,
yeah,
plus prep, and all your other commitments as a
yeah,
young high school. And all of a sudden, you blink and it's August, and we're like, well, until you've set foot on our campus, it's hard to really take that next step in the process because we need to
yeah.
know that you're serious. And
Yeah. If
I
you're
mean,
not
look,
going to
like
show up
you
to,
can't be
I
serious
say,
until
if
you
they're not
see
going
it.
to show up to visit,
Yeah.
right, and make that effort, there's probably you can legitimately question how interested are you, right? Like, if you're really
Mhm.
interested, you're going to go see the school, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Sure.
Hey, can I ask you about that whole? Totally wasn't the last question, but the early decision, is that sort of your, I don't want to say policy, but is that your thing? Like, this is the soccer program. We want you guys to commit. We want early decision, and that's that. Or is that an institutional thing, like the college? If you're going to play athletics, or I don't know, like you have to go early decision.
I mean, it's just a little bit of both, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
however admissions operates at your institution, there's typically going to be like a trickle down effect into
Yeah.
athletics as well. And we tend to yield more students, or the
Yeah.
majority, through early application deadlines, and so
Yeah.
naturally that's gonna start to impact the way we do things as well. So I'd
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
it's a little of both.
Okay. All right. So the last one for you, and then I'll let you go climb that 14,000 foot peak. Um, do you do you have any? Do you have outlined goals yet for the fall that you can share? Like what you're thinking about the fall?
I mean, I think about the same thing every year. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, it's about, look, like if you want to be playing in November,
Yeah.
and look, we have a good program. We have a good team. We're consistently strong. I think we've shown that on our day, like we could beat anybody, if we show up and play our best. I think we're also very capable of being beaten by anybody on any day.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But so for me, it's like, no, like NCAA tournament runs, like that's something you'd love to do, but it's not happened here for a long time. And I
Hmm.
think that's like putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So,
Yeah.
as much as it would be fun to be like, the goal is the Final Four this weekend. It's like, what, you got to earn the right
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
that as a goal going in. And so for
Yeah.
me, it's about winning your conference tournament, which we've not been able to do, right? We've won the regular season.
Hmm.
We're there. We're at the end of the year every year, but we've not won it. And in the West region, with it being so challenging to get into the
Yeah.
NCAA tournament, it's like,
Yeah.
look, like the process is not going to be kind to schools out here.
Yeah.
Like our region's
Very
been
true.
skipped over entirely from an at-large bid. So it's like
Yeah.
I have to tell the players, like, look, like if you want to be playing the NCAA tournament, the only way to leave it in your hands is to win the conference tournament. And so then you kind
Yeah.
of step back from there and say, well, okay, so what do you got to do to win the conference tournament? It's like, well, you got to
Right.
be in it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
our league's very competitive. I have a lot of respect for all the teams in our league. It's become a
Yeah.
strong conference, and we're now only a four-team tournament. So you got to have a strong regular season, make sure you're in that Final Four, which is not a given. And
Yeah.
then you got to go and win it. And I think one goal takes care of the other of being in the
Hmm.
NCAA tournament. And then I think like if you get there, you hit the reset button and you redefine your
Yeah.
goals. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
season again. And I
Yeah.
know there's going to be some teams that are, if they've been in the NCAA tournament 20 years in a row, right? That starting goal might be a little different. But like I said, I do think you have to earn the right to
Yeah.
have those kind of conversations early in the preseason. And as good as we've been, we're not there. And I think that's important for the guys to know that, like that, we need to continue to grow and get better, to have those kind of conversations. But I also say to them every year, it's like, no, you get there, I'll back you guys. Like we are good enough. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a tough
That's
process
a
though.
that's an interesting point you raise about, and I don't, I'm not. It's not a complaint. It's not right. Like by and large, for you guys to get at large bids is really difficult. Under normal, if you were to do what you could, right? Just because again, the travel, how do you find the teams? Like it's very hard to get yourselves into a position where to get that at large bid. And so, yeah, I think not the easy answer. It is win your conference tournament.
100%.
That is like otherwise your fate and history doesn't support getting an at large bid. Right? Maybe in some cases, I
Absolutely.
don't know that, I don't know, but I think probably it's really, really hard. Like your strength
Yeah.
of schedule is just really difficult to get up to a level that would get you that, and then you obviously have to be
Yeah.
successful, like you
Yeah.
can here, on the East Coast, where you can, you could have a 5.75, whatever the a high rating is, and not go an hour. You can be within an hour, and you can get that strength of schedule rating pretty high up there. Where I
Yeah.
don't think you guys have that luxury, unless you have an
Yeah.
unlimited budget, and it doesn't. I have yet to meet a
Even,
school that
even then,
does.
you still have to find the games. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not like last year we put together a great schedule. We had to play 11 away from home. Like
yeah.
that's not a good
You're
long term strategy.
you're this is the other thing, like I've been saying, and I've said before, and when I talk to, I talked to the coach of Caltech, and I talked to Occidental, and I said, like, there has to be a way. I, there has to be a way to account for the difficulty it is for. There's two things I think. There has to be, you have to take into account the difficulty it is for, let's just say, you or Colorado College to build a schedule and and do all the things you need to do to get in that large. There's got to be some way in which you sort of accommodate your region in a little bit more equitable way, to use a
Yeah.
word. And then the second one is you have to accommodate teams that manage to go legit, like undefeated, which I just go to Western Connecticut, went
Hmm.
undefeated and didn't even get an at large because they said
Right.
their strength of schedule is too low. What I'm like, that's hard under any circumstance, right? Like It's really hard. It's really hard to go 14 games or 13 games undefeated where you're at, and you managed to do that. And is there a way to reward you for that? I don't know. I'm just saying, like, these are the things I think about. Like, well, that's a pretty remarkable thing, given how many times you had to go on the road for that.
Yeah. Oh, I just think like you got so many AQs because there's so many conferences, right? Not many independents anymore. That
Yep.
When all those spots get sucked up and
Yep.
upsets happen in conference tournaments, just like your basketball March Madness
Yeah.
stuff and
Yep.
bubbles are burst and all that, there's always going to be probably a dozen teams or more that are going to feel hard done by the process where they're
That's true.
on the
That's a
outside
great
looking
point.
in, and like it's just the way, that's just the reality. And
Yeah.
in all likelihood, there's going to be a team or two in the West region that's going to be in that group.
Yeah.
So look, it's not an excuse or anything. That's why we just tell the guys like, go win the tournament. Like,
Go win the tournament.
it,
Absolutely.
Like, it's gonna be
That's
tough.
the surefire way, right? Like, again, like just the surefire way win your tournament.
It makes goal setting really easy too.
Yeah. There's one bullet, right? Like, win the tournament.
Yeah. First preseason meeting takes about 2 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, this is fantastic. Really did enjoy it. I was really looking forward to this. I wish I could get out to you guys one of these times. Would love to even just watch a game there in that beautiful setting. I am going to post the picture of your field with the mountains in the background. It's just absolutely stunning. But great conversation. Really do appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.